Hey everyone, it's Terrence Branley with the Grow IT Partners podcast, and today I'm grateful to have Mike Ralph with me, who is the managing director of Band of Coders, which I love. I'm going to ask you about that, by the way, in a second. But Band of Coders is a full-service boutique development shop, provides software development and technical consulting services, and Mike, we're grateful to have you today.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Terrence. Glad to be here.
All right, so Band of Coders. There's a great series that I love called Band of Brothers. Is there any correlation to that, or?
No, not that I know of. Beta Coders, I think it was a one-liner actually. So, literally a bunch of programmers showed up at the door and said, "We're the Band of Coders," and that became the name of the company. Well before my time.
How long have you been there?
Full time since about 2021 ish. I started just before pandemic, which had some different challenges there. Just before
Yeah, for
lockdown.
sure. Okay, so why don't we do this? Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and how you came about coming over to Band of Coders?
Technical background. I've always loved programming. Math and programming, that sort of thing has always been my forte. So, working with developers over the years, a lot of great developers. I enjoy working with young developers as well. So, I've been a developer. I think it's been 17 or 18 years by now, and lots of different technical problems to solve, and working with new people. Like I say, it's really rewarding to help people learn and get into the industry, and to deliver value to whoever the client is. So if I'm working over the years for different companies, just making sure we do the right thing for the client. We always advise the right thing, even if it's not the decision they make. We always let them know that there's option A was this. Option B, it's within your budget, and if it's good enough, it's good enough. That sort of thing. So gradually moving into more management roles, and now as director at Toronto for Band of Coders, you get to just run the office somewhat autonomously and just working directly with clients, and of course hiring developers. I never really stopped doing that as well.
Great. So let's talk about what are the types of when you guys are talking to prospects or clients that you're helping them solve problems. Like, what are the type of problems, issues, challenges that they are facing currently, and how is it that Band of Coders gets involved and helps solve those challenges, or kind of gets those prospects, clients to their desired outcomes?
Uh, yeah, uh, Often there's a need. Either it's an immediate need, like they very straightforward, they need something done. Like, we do all sorts of software development, so it could be a website, or adjustments to an existing website, maybe mobile apps, desktop apps. We've done even firmware for hardware and custom hardware. That it doesn't always come up in conversation, but we have had projects related to that. So it's really full service. Any software needs, but generally someone will come to me and say, hey, I really need to add this thing on my website. It exists already. It's built using X technology, and we can't, either we don't have the capacity, or my developer just left, or for whatever reason they need some external help. So they'll come with a problem. Very often it'll just be a matter of discussing what their needs are and identifying, okay, can we fill that need? Usually we do have developers that we've worked with in the past that can address that need for them. And then it's just a matter of planning it out properly. And if we find anything along the way that could use some help, it's almost like a mini tech audit. We'll always recommend things and just say, hey, you might want to keep this in mind. Almost like you go get your oil changed, and they recommend you probably flush your transmission fluid every now and then, sort of thing, right?
Either that or add blinker fluid.
Yeah, blinker fluid, yes.
So who is your target market? Do you serve SMBs, mid-size, like, give us an idea of the type of folks that you're typically working with?
Broadly, really anyone who needs custom software, because the software itself, it can be made to scale, or it can be a very small project. It can be someone who needs just a little bit of help tweaking a site that they made with Wix or some other online tools. We can service the small clients in that way, but then we've done larger projects for big customers with teams of 5 or 10 or more developers working on it at once. So generally for what I have going on in Toronto, it's the small and medium size projects, maybe 1 or 1.5 developers, project managers, sometimes a designer.
What are the types, like what are the size of the companies? And you
Right.
said that it kind of ranges. Like maybe kind of give me an example of like, and again, I know it's probably a range, right? But like, give me an idea of the size and types of maybe types of industries that you guys typically are working with.
Yeah, plenty of startups actually. So they start real small, and yeah, they can have fewer than 10 people often. So, I've done some work with nonprofits, actually, some really rewarding projects with nonprofits. Sometimes they have a shoestring budget. Sometimes they don't have any staff developers. It's not their expertise. They're solving another problem, not a software problem. So, their organization may have 100 or 200 or 500 people, but fewer than you can count on your hand of technical people. So yeah, it depends on how you want to measure that as well. Yeah, sometimes the companies can be quite large, but we're working with a subset, like a division of a company, a manager that they have the budget to, the discretion to bring us in for a project or two, and we can just show them what we're able to do, and um, you know, kind of move around within the company from there. Like they'll introduce us to other people who could use our help.
And you've mentioned obviously that you're director of Toronto. How many locations does Band of Coders have?
Yeah, we have offices Canada and U.S. I think so. The main ones that come to mind is Los Angeles, Milwaukee, Toronto. We have Atlanta, and we have Fort Lauderdale. There's been others in the past, but they wouldn't say come and go. They do move around. Sometimes a director will move on to. They'll make a client so happy they'll be hired by that client. So that happens sometimes, and then that office, I mean, it technically closes down, and another location will be created. But I think of our head office is in Atlanta, and I think of our office in Buenos Aires as sort of a second HQ.
Okay. So is in your opinion, is it important? Like, do your clients largely within a certain geographical area of you, or is that important at all?
Not so much. Yeah, I work with businesses generally North America, but it doesn't have to be East Coast here. Um, different offices will have more experience with certain industries. So, um, for example, in LA, they do a lot of work with healthcare applications and stuff in the US. So they're familiar with the regulations in that. So it just makes sense to refer someone who's asking for healthcare related things to that office um, versus, if you're looking for something maybe hardware related, they'd probably refer you to my office because we've had several of those projects. So it's more like your need. It it doesn't really matter now that we're all sort of distributed. Having that time zone difference, it's less of a pain point than having the wrong person on the project for you.
Right. 100%. And then we were talking about that even before the podcast, right? Offline, but the world has definitely become a smaller place, and surely even the pandemic kind of hyper accelerated that.
That's right.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the success stories. Everyone has success stories, and people love hearing about them. And sometimes I think it's just because they're like, "Hey, that was like that's like where I'm at right now, right? Like we were in that same position as that client, and they helped them get from point A to point B. And I'd be curious if you've got some success stories, whether they're in a smaller size, mid size, whether in a specific industry, but maybe you can tell us about a few of those.
Yeah. A recent one, actually, we just helped organization. I probably shouldn't name them. I didn't actually ask them, so I'm
Okay,
gonna
we'll
leave them
let's keep
nameless.
that the name out then for time being. You can just say industry and then
Yeah,
leave
we
it at that.
basically it's a nonprofit that connects growers of farmers to local restaurants and people who would just buy their
Like a
products.
farm to table type of thing.
Yeah, yeah, and they have an app in iOS and Android. They needed a website, so they came to us. We set up their website, made some adjustments as well to their apps. Now we have a few more things planned, but we were able to launch the website on time, and did a great job with that. He's very happy with what we're able to do, and yeah, so just adding more features like scheduling a pickup. This isn't the kind of thing you would expect most farmers to be able to just have a website to do, but this is a nonprofit, so they're not going to be charging ridiculous amounts to provide the service to people. It just it really helps something I've already had people asking, oh, when's this available in Canada? Because they are an American nonprofit. So we're going to help them with that as well. But yeah, it's great. It's exciting. They've just launched it, and I wish I could just name them. Maybe I will in the future.
Maybe on the next podcast you'll be able to
That's
name
right.
them. That's a good one. Any others you'd like to kind of mention?
Yeah, we helped another company launch. Now they're not fully launched to public, but they're launched with their test users platform to connect workers to jobs. I wouldn't say gig workers, but predominantly, let's say restaurant industry. You need someone who has experience, and it's kind of you're down to the wire. So you can go on this website and actually hire someone very quickly, sort of look at their credentials, bring them on board, and and you basically just pay on the website and you get the person. You review each other, so they review your business, you review the worker afterward, and people are going to be able to build up their history and credentials on there. So yeah, it's really helpful to be able to, as a worker, find a job on short notice, and as a business, when you're in that tight spot where the last worker you had just they're sick, or you really can't grind them too much. You can't insist that someone works their 10th day in a row. You don't want to do that sort of thing. So this will let them have an alternative to bring in some extra help. Yeah.
Any what was I was just gonna sorry to interrupt. I was just gonna say is do you have like are there what would be like a you would consider like a large or extensive project?
Any big projects where we're making like the double-sided marketplace, like the workers and the businesses, they find each other. That can be complicated. Now we've done a few like that. You can start simple and grow that to very complex, options and features and settings and things like that. Um, yeah, because that's just the mechanism. The rest of it is okay. Well, how do you prevent people from taking advantage of your rating system? Preventing fake reviews and stuff. It's tale as old as e-commerce. So these are the problems that we try to solve and try to at least educate clients on. When hey, you have a 5-star system, that people really only pick 1 or 5. Why not have a like dislike sort of thing, if that's what you're really going for, that sort of thing, right?
That's so true. I was actually just having this conversation with someone the other day. You're talking about they're looking. I think we were looking at like restaurants, and they're like, "Well, it's only got a 4-star rating, right?" And I was like, "That's actually not terrible, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're doing your quick math, that's like 80%, right?" And it's like that's not as bad as you think it is, but we're so used to either like or dislike. To your point, right? It's like, hey, just give those two choices rather than the people do think in terms of 1 or 5, right?
Anyone compelled to give a review is usually pretty compelled one way or the other. The only 3s and 4s you're really getting is if you're asking people for a review, reminding them they might give you a 3 or 4. Though those are pretty honest reviews, I think. It's almost like you should just chop off the 5s and 1s, or use a tool to say, okay, this comment's generic, or this comment is too similar to many other positive ones. It looks like a fake, and then sort of cull the herd. Yeah, there's a lot of really cool technical problems that I love to dive into. This is just one of those things that could be better, but it's actually a lot more complex than you may think. Right?
Yeah, and I think that's even beyond the technical side of things, right? That gets into kind of the UI and kind of the reasoning behind it, right? In terms of what are you actually trying to get? Because in that case, right, there's two ways to look at it. You can be like, hey, I'm trying to figure out if people like us or don't like us. But the 3 or 4 is almost where you're probably going to get the most valuable information in terms of feedback to your business and improvement. And we talk about that all the time with our clients in terms of when we go out to the market. It's like we have the luxury of the market being able to tell us what they want, what their challenges are, what they're trying to accomplish, right? And so that's kind of the same way with the 3s and 4s. So there's almost two different things, right? There's like the business aspect side of things, the psychology aspects of things, and then the technical expertise part.
Yeah, that's right. So there's almost more value to be able to ask someone who gave a 4-star rating, or if they gave a also meaningful comment, why wasn't this 5, right? Or why was this a 2 and not a 1? It's like, what was like that one good thing? Let's make sure we don't not do that thing anymore. So yeah, it's that I agree totally. It's very important to gather all the feedback and look at it.
Cool. Well, let's talk about growth. Wouldn't be Grow IT if we weren't talking about growth, both challenges, success stories, et cetera. What are the challenges that you guys are facing with growth, or what have you had success with in terms of growing your firm?
So some big challenges lately have been budgets. It's very hard to get people to, uh, sign the dotted line on a contract. If it's a large deal in particular, it's always a challenge to get people to part with their money. But lately, more so than usual, just people have, really tightened up their budgets. For custom software development, it's not always going to be the cheapest option. Um, to try to combat that challenge is, take baby steps. I like to just get the first piece of a project, whether that's even solidifying the requirements for them, work with them a little bit, deliver some value. So, if we need to walk away at this point or put it on hold for 3 6 months, while funding is collected, whatever that may be, you've left with some value for this first small piece of the project, and then we can talk about the next steps after that. So, the next phase might involve, one developer or a part-time developer to do some work, some automation. For example, you're growing your e-store, you work with Amazon. You can't take it to the next level because processing those orders is a manual thing that Joe does every morning when he comes to work. You only have one Joe. So, we've helped automate those sorts of things. And that's a small project that would have an impact on the revenue, for example. So it's really just finding a way to give them some value for as little as possible. But yeah, custom software, it's not going to be the cheapest, but when there's no tool out there that'll just turnkey solve that, for example, the Amazon problem, processing orders and getting them to your warehouse, you may need to have someone like Band Coders come and help you out with that. So it could be, very small to start.
Yeah, and especially if if it's going to have a huge impact in your business, right? There's certain things that there's certain things that are probably luxuries in our business, right? Like, okay, hey, it would be great if we could do this. There's kind of like need to have and would be good to have, right? And probably a lot more people right now, and I want to ask you about that too, are probably addressing the need to have versus the good or great to have. And do you see that right now? Is it economic headwinds? Has it been going on for most of 2024? I mean, I hear a lot of people talk about, hey, maybe things will be better at least here in the U.S. after elections. But what are you kind of seeing out in the marketplace in terms of that?
Yeah, there's a lot of conversations I have. There may not be a need for custom development today, but they
Mm.
understand. Okay, maybe sometime down the road we'll get to that, and yeah, it could be just, they're trying to be polite and tell me, no, I can't afford this, or I don't really see the value, which is it's going to happen. Um, yeah, it probably has a lot to do with economics. It's, for the price of hiring a third party company like Band Coders to do your work, people look at that, they do the math, and they say, well, I could hire a full time developer. Well, I don't need a full time developer, but it's a lot cheaper per hour to have a full time developer. So it's really hard to justify paying, whatever the ratio is, what you were going to pay in a salary to a hourly contractor to do essentially the same job. But yeah, we just try to show the value and say, okay, well, you can have a developer that's not full time, pay for the hours that are used, that sort of thing. Address your need and solve that business problem. Try to identify the root problem here. It's like, okay, are you trying to expand your revenue? Are you trying to attract more people to your website? Do you need a programmer? Do you need a marketer? We can identify those things. Get a designer to look at the website. Say, yeah, no one clicks your buy button because it doesn't always make itself prominent on the screen. It's not presented in a way that makes people realize that this is the page to go purchase your product. So you just changing some small things, and but yeah, it could just be there's no money. There's a lot of uncertainty. So yeah, very well.
Yeah, and even to your point in terms of people saying, hey, that would I could go hire a coder for that, right? And it's like, well, okay, like those, it's not like you can just go find them off the bus stop too, right? Like that's, let's be honest here, right? You have to go out and recruit and then hire and then train and then manage that person and go, oh wait, right? Like we actually only need them for X, right? And we talk about this even in our business too a lot in terms of there are different things that are needed at different times, and you only have so much capital to invest in your business, so much of an operating, you know, budget to manage and to leverage and to use that the most effective and efficient way to grow your own business, right? And so, leveraging the expertise of someone, like band of coders, right, that you can deploy what's necessary and needed rather than, having a client invest in something that is going to be a difficult challenge and maybe not needed. It's funny because, and one of the questions I was going to ask you in terms of if you ever hired a salesperson to grow your business, that's a lot. We use the same analogy, right? Like, hey, we could, for your services, we could just hire a salesperson. It's like, yeah, you could, right? You go out and recruit them, hire them, manage, train them, and then hope that it works out, right? And then hopefully then you've got to build a marketing infrastructure below them to support them. You can't just hire a salesperson and pat them on the butt and say, go get us new business. So there are those, similar, parallels though. And I guess I'd ask you, have you guys ever looked at hire a salesperson, or is that kind of, do you fire up that initiative?
That's out of my hands for the most part. Yeah, how we're structured is my office, or all the offices, we operate independently. We get to just run the projects. We do have salespeople, so it's taken care of by HQ. We have some salespeople. We do sometimes use external salespeople as well to bring us new business. But by the time it gets to me, sometimes I really don't know the source of the lead. But the point is, I'm still interested in talking about the person's needs and that sort of thing. That's kind of where I take it. But yeah, certainly, anyone who's able to boost lead generation or sales is of great value. You need the revenue to make the revenue. So yeah, you have to do that.
Well, let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about some of the trends that you're seeing out there. Obviously, AI is a dominant one, so we can even just change the question to that. But like, what is it that you see as the biggest trend, and how is it affecting the industry and the different businesses that you serve?
Yeah, well, obviously AI is huge. I mean, I have my opinions about AI, and I think it's a great tool, and I do get a lot of requests now. Generally, companies want to use it to make that cool interface where you just ask something in plain English, you get an answer in plain English. They want to make sure it's accurate. They want to make sure that it uses their real data, their real database, but it's not giving it to a large company to go process, and so they're concerned about privacy as well. AI is huge. Another one, though, I wanted to actually change this because AI is the hot topic. I could probably talk for an hour about AI, but what we're also getting requests for is there's a lot of companies like VC companies. They need to do due diligence, and they don't necessarily have a staff of programmers. So we can actually provide just a tech audit. We have a huge checklist of things that we go through. So you want to acquire or invest in a company. Here's all the things that would be red flags if I were just to join a software project. If you're doing too many of those things, maybe the software's not as worth as much as they say, or if they're hitting all the right notes, then they're actually getting good value.
So you guys can come in like, if VC firm has or an M&A firm has a acquisition target, and if it's tech software, you can kind of come in and help them almost do. I'm trying to think of a good now. I mean, audit's a good one, but
The due
almost an
diligence
assessment.
process.
Due diligence. Thank you. Yep, that's a better word. Yeah, for them. Is that correct?
Yep, that's right. And it's looking at the tech parts, but then also the staffing, without going through the resumes necessarily, but just meeting with people, and um, even if it's not for an investment or acquisition, if they want to bring someone in just to do this with their company or the department, a company can get us to say, okay, well, can you help us identify, why is it that every other release we miss something, or we have this thing, we're not sure what the cause is, could you have a look? It's basically doing a tech audit or a due diligence sort of process with them about that.
That's huge. It's the ability to uncover kind of red flags, skeletons in the closet, and frankly, probably assist with valuation, which is probably part of what they're looking for, as well.
Yeah, it's just like troubleshooting software, and then there's troubleshooting software development. So it's another, and it's a really cool challenge that I enjoy.
Awesome. Well, speaking of what you enjoy, what do you enjoy most about what you do? Uh, you know,
I think still working with really great, talented programmers, whether they're new and they're eager to learn, or they have tons of experience, 20 more years of experience than myself. Love working with really smart people to solve these smart people problems, delivering the value to the clients in the process. It's really rewarding to me.
it's awesome. Well, can you kind of talked about it earlier in the discussion? Can you walk me through like what it a path for a new client, what it looks like with you guys, and maybe how that kind of sort of starts?
Yeah. So if you're in an organization, you're not sure, maybe you're not sure if you need our services at all. If everything's great, you're probably not thinking about going external. You're like, oh, our team's really churning away, everything's wonderful, we're not missing any deadlines, everything's perfect. You're probably not thinking about external development, but chances are there's something that's not right, or you want to grow, but if you try that, you're going to really tax the team you have. So yeah, you can schedule a discovery call to talk with us. Basically, I just talk to you about your needs, your company, how things are structured, how they're working, all that sort of stuff. If you want to do something like a tech audit, that's one route. If you have a specific need, like obviously there's the emergency. My website's broken, or my website barely works, or help me fix X. That's something we can get people on really quickly for you. But if you're just trying to troubleshoot, okay, how do I get a little more, either out of my team or out of my own customer acquisition flow? You say it's an e-commerce site or similar. Yeah, we can definitely look into those things from all angles. Marketing, UX, project management, development, that sort of thing. Um, Likewise, behind the scenes, you're spending a certain amount on technology. Maybe you're wondering, can this be done for less? We're deployed in the cloud. A lot of people are feeling the pinch now with the prices of cloud hosting, but don't realize that if you host it yourself, you also have to hire the people to manage that yourself. So it may not make sense, or it may make sense to switch depending on how much you're actually going to be, moving off the cloud, for example.
There's always challenges to be to solved, and it's always good to have providers and folks that you can kind of rely on for
That's right.
uh, you know honest and I think the best way to put it is business smart solutions type of thing. So I've appreciated your conversation. Where's a good place for people to find more about Band of Coders, to follow you? I assume you're on LinkedIn.
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. I forget what my Mike Ralph. You'll find me on LinkedIn.
I'll put the
Band of
I'll put the
Coders.
link down here. We'll put it down in the show notes here.
It's like calling my own phone number. I kind of forget it sometimes. But yeah, bandofcoders.com. You can schedule a discovery call and either be in touch with myself or one of the other directors to go over your needs.
Awesome. Well, Mike, I've enjoyed our conversation today. Appreciate you coming on the Grow IT podcast, and we'll look forward to talking to you again.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.